All right, I went 4-1 on my 5 personal bets on BrockPage.com yesterday. $1,000 bettors made over $2,600 just yesterday alone using those bets. We also improved to 4-0 in our last 4 $1.99 daily best plays on my website as well. And the link for today's $1.99 daily best play is in the description section below. And if you want to see my current personal bet record, you can do that right now for free by going to BrockPage.com. It's located right there on the home page. Now you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on my YouTube channel and what I do on my website. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. What I do on BrockPage.com is I actually share with you which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally. Now, guys, we currently have over 975 members who are signed up and active on that website right now. Just remember, guys, if you sign up for a package here today on BrockPage.com, you're actually going to get full access to that membership every single day all the way through the end of March. But with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. We're going to start off with the Hawks taking on the Pacers. That's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off on Monday, March 28th, 2022. Happy Monday to you. Hopefully you had yourself a great weekend. Now, Atlanta's minus 7.5 in this ball game here. Total's 235. And even though Atlanta's favored on the road in this spot here, they've actually done very little with regard to covering the point spread recently. The Hawks have gone just 3-9 against the spread in their last dozen outings, and that's good for only 25% during that span. Now, the Hawks have also been pretty bad on the road this season as well. Atlanta's just 13-23 straight up when traveling, and they covered in only 30% of those contests. Now, they're taking on an Indiana team who covered recently against the likes of Portland, Atlanta, and San Antonio. Now, the Pacers have also had little problems grabbing defensive boards this year. They're actually in the top 5 in the NBA in defensive rebounding at home. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, Buddy Hield is averaging over 18 points per contest with Indiana. 5 rebounds, 4 assists for Buddy as well. Meanwhile, Tyrese Halliburton is drilling 40% of his three-pointers with the Pacers. He's also averaging 16 points a night. When it comes to offensive production in this one, the Pacers score 114 points a game in the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. They're also in the top 10 in shooting from the field at home. Now, injury-wise, Brogdon, Duarte, and Jackson are out. Washington and Batazzi are questionable. Meanwhile, for Atlanta on the other side, Collins and Mays are out. Gallinari and Bogdanovic are questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, Atlanta saw overs recently with the likes of Golden State, New York, and Portland. They also allowed 119 points a game in their last 10 meetings with the Pacers. Meanwhile, Indiana's 24-13 to the over in their own building. And that's good for 65% in that particular category. I'm going to lean toward the Pacers plus 7.5, keeping this one close. And the over 235. Next ball game, it is going to be Magic versus the Cavaliers, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Cleveland's minus 9 with the total at 215.5. And as much as Cleveland struggled to cover the number here recently, Orlando's been equally as bad. The Magic failed to cover in 5 out of their last 6 ball games, and they're actually winning just 26% of their road games this year. When it comes to offensive production in this one, Magic scoring just 104 points per contest. They're also in the bottom 3 in shooting from the field. Now, they're taking on a Cleveland squad who's amongst the best defensive teams in the entire NBA. They're currently in the top 10 in defensive field goal percentage themselves. They're also allowing only 102 points a game in the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Now, scoring-wise, Darius Garland's averaging 21.5 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and 8 assists. Meanwhile, Evan Mobley is scoring 15 points a game himself, along with 8 boards and a couple assists. When it comes to shooting the basketball, the Cavs are actually in the top 10 in offensive field goal percentage. Now, injury-wise, Rondo and Wade are still out. Meanwhile, for Orlando on the other side of things, Suggs is out for them. Carter is questionable. When it comes to the total, Orlando saw unders recently with the likes of Golden State, Minnesota, and New Orleans. And they also averaged just 102 points per contest in their last 10 meetings with Cleveland. Meanwhile, the Cavs on the other side are 24-13 to the under in their contests at home this year. That's good for 65% in that particular category. I'm going to lean toward Cleveland -9 in the under 215.5. Next ball game should be a good one. I'm talking about Nuggets versus the Hornets, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Denver's -3.5 on the road, totals 233. Now, the Nuggets are tough to stop when they get around the painted area. They're actually in the top 3 in the NBA in offensive field goal percentage. And they're led by Nikola Jokic, who scores over 26 points a game. He's also making 57% of his field goals. Now, one more thing about the Joker. He's actually averaging 13.5 rebounds a game. So, like I said, these guys are pretty tough inside the paint. Now, Monte Morris, he's really good away from the paint. He's actually really good from beyond the arc. He's drilling 40% of his 3 balls, and he's also scoring over a dozen points a night himself. When it comes to defensive play in this one, the Nuggets lead the entire NBA in guarding the 3 ball on the road. Now, they're taking on a Charlotte team who's played some really good basketball here lately themselves, but they did fail to cover recently against the likes of New York and New Orleans. Now, the Hornets still have significant problems on the defensive end of the court as well. I know these guys are really exciting and fun to watch because they score a lot of points, but their defensive effort is really hurting them. These guys are currently in the bottom 3 in defensive rebounding, and they give up nearly 115 points a night. Now, injury-wise, Gordon Hayward's still out with an ankle injury. Meanwhile, for Denver on the other side of things, Green and Campazzo are questionable. Najee is out. Now, total-wise, Denver went 7-1 to the over in their last 8 ball games. They're also 70% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Charlotte. Meanwhile, the Hornets on the other side of things saw overs recently with the likes of New York, Dallas, and Atlanta. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Denver -3.5 in the over 233. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Bulls versus the Knicks, 7:30 p.m. East. Chicago's -5 with the total at 219.5. And even though it's New York who's in the second of a back-to-back here this evening, it's actually Chicago who lost 5 out of their last 7. They've done a lackluster job of covering the point spread lately. Now, Chicago covered the number only 3 times since February 24th. They posted a record of just 3-11 against the spread during that time frame. Aside from having a losing record on the road this year, Chicago's biggest problem is their defensive play. These guys are actually in the bottom 3 in defending the 3 ball on the road. And they're allowing 113 points a game in that very same category. Now, they're taking on a New York team who won their last 3 straight themselves. And they're actually one of the better rebounding teams in the game right now. Now, not only are the Knicks in the top 10 in defensive boards per contest, they're also in the top 3 in the NBA in offensive rebounding per game as well. Now, scoring-wise, Julius Randle's averaging nearly 21 points per contest, along with double-digit rebounds. Meanwhile, R.J. Barrett is averaging nearly 20 points a game himself, along with 5 boards and a couple assists. When it comes to defensive play in this one, the Knicks are in the top 5 in the league in guarding the field goal. Now, injury-wise, Noel and Grimes are questionable for New York. Meanwhile, for Chicago, they're mostly healthy, for the exception of Lonzo Ball, who's actually still out with a knee injury. Now, total-wise, Chicago saw overs recently with the likes of New Orleans and Utah. Meanwhile, the Knicks saw 3 out of their last 4 get over the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward the New York Knicks +5 in the over 219.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Kings versus the Heat, 7:30 p.m. East. Miami's -13, totals 216.5. And as good as Miami's been at home this year, these guys have been brutal when it comes to covering the number recently. They're actually 0-7 against the spread in their last 7 outings. And in addition to that, they actually find themselves in the middle of a 4-game losing streak. So not only are these guys not doing a great job against the number, they're also just losing in the outright game as well. Seems to be some, I don't want to say disdain. There's just a lot of turmoil within the organization right now. It seems like Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler are kind of butting heads here. But anyway, out of Miami's last 9 ball games, they're averaging just 104 points per contest offensively. And they're taking on a Sacramento team who covered in their last 3 straight themselves. They also went 7-3 against the spread in their last 10. So I'm really not worried about who's going to win this game. I just think Sacramento has the advantage with regard to covering that number. Now, Harrison Barnes, he's drilling nearly 41% of his three-pointers this year. He's also scoring 16 points a game. Meanwhile, Davion Mitchell's averaging double-digit points a game himself, along with a couple of boards and 3.5 assists. And speaking of scoring in this one, Sacramento's averaging 114 points per contest in their last 10 outings. Now, injury-wise, Sabonis, Holmes, and Fox are out for the Kings. Meanwhile, for Miami, Tucker, Hero, Martin, and Vincent are questionable for them. Now, total-wise, Miami saw 5 out of their last 9 fall under the line. They also averaged just 107 points a game in their last 10 meetings with the Kings. Meanwhile, Sacramento, on the other side of things, saw unders recently with the likes of Indiana, Chicago, and Denver. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Sacramento, plus 13, and the under, 216.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Celtics versus the Raptors, 7:30 p.m. East. Toronto's -4 with the total at 212.5. Now, Toronto's played some really good basketball down the home stretch here. They went 8-2 straight up in their last 10 outings. And they've also covered in 80% of those contests. Now, the Raptors have done a real nice job on the defensive end of the court this season. As a matter of fact, these guys are allowing just 106 points a game in the Scotiabank Arena. Now, scoring-wise, Pascal Siakam's averaging 22 points a game, along with 8 boards and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Freddie VanVleet is making nearly 40% of his shots from beyond the arc himself, along with 20 points a game. When it comes to rebounding the basketball, the Raptors are in the top 10 in offensive boards. They're taking on a Boston team who's in the second of a back-to-back here tonight, and they're going to most likely have to go to work without their leading scorer, Jason Tatum. Now, I don't think he's injured right now. He is officially listed as questionable, although he implied yesterday in a post-game interview that he was most likely going to sit this one out here against Toronto. So I don't think it is injury-related. I just think in the second of a back-to-back, he's so valuable for the playoffs that I think he's just kind of taking a day of rest. But anyway, with Tatum out, that's certainly bad news for Boston backers because these guys already start off slow offensively. Boston's currently in the bottom 10 in the NBA in both first quarter and second quarter scoring. They also failed to cover more recently against the likes of Oklahoma City, Dallas, and Detroit. Now, when it comes to the injury report, once again, Tatum is questionable. Horford and Williams are out. Meanwhile, for Toronto on the other side of things, Gary Trent Jr. is questionable with a toe. When it comes to the total, Toronto saw 3 out of their last 4 fall under the line. 60% to the under in their last 10 meetings with Boston. Meanwhile, the Celtics on the other side of things saw unders recently with the likes of Golden State, Dallas, and Charlotte. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Toronto -4 and the under 212.5. And with that, we're going to jump into our next matchup. And that's going to be Warriors versus the Grizzlies, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Memphis is -11, totals 222. Now, the Grizzlies are on a 4-game winning streak. They also lost only 3 games since February 24th. Now, Memphis is also 27-10 at the FedEx Forum, and they're averaging more points per contest at home than any other team in the association right now. And speaking of offensive production, it's Desmond Bane who's shooting nearly 43% from downtown. Now, Bane's also averaging 18 points per contest. He's these guys' deep ball threat. Meanwhile, Dillon Brooks, he's scoring over 17.5 points per contest himself, along with 3 rebounds and a couple assists. And speaking of rebounds, the Grizzlies are also leading the NBA in offensive boards per game. They're taking on a Golden State team who lost 5 out of their last 6 themselves. They covered the number only 1 time during that span. When it comes to offensive production in this one, The Warriors have really struggled getting to the basket over the past couple of weeks or so. These guys are averaging only 104 points a game in their last 6 outings. And of course, that's mostly due to the absence of Steph Curry. Now, injury-wise, Curry's still out with that foot injury. Thompson, Green, and Porter, they're also listed as doubtful to play. Meanwhile, Memphis, on the other side of things, they still have Morant, who's still out for them. Jackson and Clark are questionable, although the Grizzlies have proven they can still play at a high level without their leading scorer, Ja Morant. Now, total-wise, Memphis went 6-3 to the over in their last 9 ball games. Meanwhile, Golden State, on the other side, they saw their last 3 straight get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Memphis, minus 11 in the over 222. Next contest, it is going to be Spurs versus the Rockets, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. San Antonio's minus 7 of the total at 234.5. Now, the Spurs have strung together a couple of wins here recently. They're actually on a 3-game winning streak right now. And they also got the W in 4 out of their last 5. And when it comes to covering the number here, the Spurs are actually getting the job done against the number in just about 60% of their road games. Now, scoring-wise, DeJounte Murray's averaging over 20.5 points per contest, along with 8 rebounds, 9 assists. Meanwhile, Keldon Johnson scoring 16.5 points a game himself, along with 6 boards and a handful of rebounds as well. Now, the Spurs are currently in the top 10 in the NBA in offensive rebounding per contest. They're taking on a Houston team who's dead last in the league in offensive rebounding themselves, and they're also a league worst in shooting from the foul line. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Rockets are allowing more points per game than any other team in the association. When it comes to the injury list, Garuba's still out for the Rockets. Langford's out for the Spurs. Now, total-wise, San Antonio saw overs recently with the likes of Oklahoma City and Minnesota. They're also averaging 118 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Houston. Meanwhile, the Rockets are 20-16 to the over at the Toyota Center this year. Give me San Antonio minus 7 and the over 234.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the show. Kind of the toilet bowl here, Tankapalooza. It is going to be Thunder versus Blazers, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. OKC's minus 3 on the road, totals 221. But despite being favored away from home here, OKC's gotten the W just 1 time since March 2nd. Now, Oklahoma City's scoring fewer points per contest than any other team in the NBA. They're also dead last in shooting from the field, and they're also making only 31% of their three-pointers. Now, they're taking on a Portland team who has a handful of injuries themselves, but they recently covered against the likes of Detroit, Brooklyn, and Atlanta. Now, the Blazers will also have Brandon Williams in the lineup here today, who's averaging nearly 14 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Drew Eubanks, he's scoring over a dozen points a game with Portland, along with 8.5 rebounds. When it comes to the injury report, Bledsoe, Winslow, Hart, and Watford are out for the Blazers. Meanwhile, for OKC on the other side, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Favors, and Williams, they are out for them. Baisley is also, he's been downgraded to doubtful. Now, when it comes to scoring, OKC's 21-16 to the under on the road this year. They're also averaging only 106 points a game in their last 10 head-to-head meetings with Portland. Meanwhile, the Blazers on the other side of things, they saw their last 3 straight fall under the line themselves. They're also 22-16 to the under at the Moda Center. I'm going to lean toward Portland plus 3 and the under 221. With that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on BrockPage.com. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And guys, if you want to get access to every single bet that I give out on that website, you're going to want to sign up for my board member tier package. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Monday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.